Hi, I'm Keith Allen, and I play Murphy on Z Nation, and I listen to One Up Gaming Podcast.
Hello, Andy. This is Colin. I won't be able to get in tonight. I'm sweating like a pig. 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 I'm sweating like a pig.
Prologue. No one saw the end coming. There was no single day, no single scream that marked when it began, no grand explosion or trumpet blast to herald the fall. The world didn't shatter overnight. Instead, it rotted quietly beneath the skin of a nation already fraying at the edges. It started in the forgotten places, the places no one looked at anymore. A man, no one remembered his name, coughed blood into a ragged handkerchief behind the boarded windows of a terraced house in Bolton. His fingers trembled as he stared at the stain blooming dark on the filthy cotton. Outside, rain lashed the cracked pavement. A single street lamp flickered, casting long shadows on the abandoned cars and shuttered shops. He muttered to himself, voice breaking, "Just a cold. Just a bloody flu." But deep inside, he knew. His body betrayed him, convulsing as fever burned through muscle and marrow. His neighbors didn't check, not out of cruelty, but because no one checked anymore. No one wanted to know. Hours later, his body lay slumped in a chair, one hand still clutching the handkerchief, eyes open, glassy. For a time, the house was silent. Then, the corpse shuddered. Fingers twitched. A breath that wasn't a breath rasped from blackened lips. His head jerked up, jaw slack, and the last of his humanity slid away. In Norfolk, an old farmhouse stood silent against the storm, curtains drawn tight, doors bolted. Inside, a man held his wife's hand as she trembled on the bed. Her skin had gone pale, veins black as oil spreading beneath the surface. He wept quietly, wiping her brow with a damp cloth. "It's all right, love. I'm here. I'm right here." Her eyes opened, milky and unfocused. She smiled. And then she tore out his throat. The room filled with the sound of tearing flesh, of blood splattering the cracked floorboards, and a final, gurgling gasp. Outside, the storm howled on, uncaring. No alarms were raised. No headlines broke the story. In London, sirens screamed, but sirens had always screamed. The BBC spoke of isolated disturbances, of precautionary cordons, of temporary quarantines. The newsreaders wore grim expressions, but their voices stayed calm, their ties straight, their hair neat. MPs in Westminster argued behind locked doors, their faces pale, hands shaking as reports piled up on their desks. But no action came. The city burned around them. In the underground, packed trains rattled through the tunnels. The air stank of sweat, of fear. A woman in a business suit dabbed at the blood on her lips with a tissue, telling herself it was nothing. Stress. Just stress. The man next to her stared at the smear of red, eyes wide, but said nothing. What could he say? And then came the storm, the black rain. It fell first over Sheffield, a thick, oily downpour that clung to skin like grease, that burned the eyes, that left sores that would not heal. The storm swept south, drowning the Midlands, swallowing town after town in its choking maw. Hospitals overflowed. The living turned on one another, fighting for space, for medicine, for hope. And the dead began to outnumber the living. "It's in the rain," a nurse whispered, clutching a scalpel as the infected battered the hospital doors. "It's in the bloody rain." Some said it was chemical, others biological, a punishment, an experiment. The name Echo Circle began to appear, on pirate radio, scrawled on the walls in blood-red spray paint, whispered like a curse in the dark. But no one knew what it meant. No one lived long enough to find out. The infected didn't shuffle. They didn't stumble like the dead of old horror films. They ran. Fast. Driven by hunger and something worse. Memory. Or the ghost of it. In the middle of the M62, a woman saw her son, her baby, only 7, sprinting across the motorway, mouth open, eyes wide, arms outstretched. "Mummy!" The sound of it, almost a word, almost real, froze her in place. And then he leapt, teeth bared, tearing into her throat as she screamed his name. In Leeds, a police van overturned on the ring road. Its crew barely had time to climb free before they were dragged down, screaming as teeth found flesh, as fingers clawed for their weapons in vain. In Brighton, the pier burned. Flames turned night to day as the infected hurled themselves from the rails into the sea, vanishing beneath the waves, only to crawl out hours later, bloated and reeking, still hunting. England fell in weeks. Villages became graveyards, cathedrals became tombs. The great cities, London, Manchester, Birmingham, became blackened labyrinths of ash and bone. The survivors learned quickly. Trust no one. Marauders roamed, faces daubed with blood and soot, calling themselves the Reapers. They hunted the living as eagerly as the dead, tearing through settlements, leaving only ruin. The Ash Pact came next. Torchbearers who burned their entire communities in the name of mercy. Better ash than infection, they said. Better ash than the hunger. Then the flock. Wild-eyed zealots who preached that the infection was holy, that the dead were chosen, that to be devoured was to be saved. They sang as they were torn apart, arms spread in rapture, voices rising over the screams. The army crumbled. The government vanished. The phones died. The networks fell silent, replaced by static and strange voices.
Safe zone confirmed. You are not alone.
Again and again, the beacons called out. Gentle voices, kind voices, promising sanctuary, salvation, purification. No one who followed those voices ever returned. The last true broadcast came from Coventry, a ham radio operator, his voice cracked with terror, breaking into static.
Don't trust the beacons. The beacons. It's them. It's...
Silence swallowed him, and then only ruin. Now the land is empty. The dead run the streets, silent save for the wet slap of bloodied feet on tarmac. They gather at the edges of ruined towns, watching, waiting, remembering. Above, the sky hangs low, thick with ash, heavy with the promise of the next storm. And somewhere, in the skeleton of a tower long abandoned, a lone figure moves. No name, no face, just ragged breath beneath a gas mask slick with grime. Torn gloves fumble with the controls of a dead beacon. The figure stares at the console, its lights flickering weakly, the recorded message still looping.
Safe zone confirmed. You are not alone.
A lie. The last lie. The figure hesitates. A whisper breaks the silence. Their own voice, raw and cracked. Enough! Fingers press the kill switch. The beacon's light dies. The hum fades to nothing. Outside, the dead storm rises. The air fills with the stench of rot, of burned flesh, of despair. The figure pulls the door open. Wind howls in, carrying the sound of the dead. They come fast, drawn by the noise, by the last flicker of life. Their eyes burn with hunger, with hate, with the ghost of who they once were. The figure steps into the storm, coat whipping around thin legs, boots crunching on broken glass and bone. The last breath drawn, of ash, of ruin. A last look at the world they could not save. And then they are gone, swallowed by the storm, by the dark, by the endless, dead horizon.